And to discuss the outcome of the Conference on Education in Northern Nigeria, first, let me introduce in our studio here Professor Gaji Fatima of the Department of Special Education, Faculty of Education, Bayero University, Kano. You're welcome.
Assalamu alaikum. Good morning.
Also joining us is Professor Kabil Bala, Vice Chancellor, Ahmadu Bello University, Zaria. Welcome to Good Morning Nigeria.
Good morning. Thank you.
All right. We have two other guests here with us in the studios. First, also, let me welcome Colonel Bala Mande. Colonel Bala Mande, of course, is a retired military officer and former Honorable Minister of Environment. We're glad to have you in our studios this morning.
Thank you. Good morning.
Comrade Sanusi Mekudi, Managing Director and CEO of the Kaduna State Water Corporation, is also our guest this morning.
Thank you.
Good
morning, viewers.
All right, so let's begin the conversation with the Vice Chancellor of Ahmadu Bello University, Professor Kabir Bala. The one-day conference has taken place. Yesterday we had the first part of this conversation just before the conference kicked off. Now the conference has come and gone, as the saying goes. How useful was it?
Thank you very much. The conference was very, very useful. I think the highlight of that conference was the presentation of the research conducted by very eminent scholars, headed by Professor Rukayatu Ahmed, former Minister of Education, Alhaji Ibrahim Shekaro, former Governor of Kano State, who is an educationist, renowned educationist. He was chairman of ANCOPS, All Nigeria Conference of Principals, at one time during his career. Now they came up with 8 terms of references with very, very far-reaching recommendations that, if implemented, they will contribute greatly to solving some of these challenges that we have of education in the North. Teacher quantity, quality, training and retraining, capacity building, funding. And so some of the resolutions taken were that the major stakeholders, who are the state governors on these states, should be sensitized adequately for them to adopt these recommendations and implement them in their states. Also, it has been recommended that implementation committees should be set up by the state governments along with the assistance of the Ahmadu Bello Foundation, the conveners of the conference, so that this will be implemented. And I tell you, there are far-reaching recommendations. And if they're implemented, I think they will go a long way in improving the state of education in northern Nigeria.
Yeah, let me throw my first question to Professor Gaji Fatima. The issue of political will depend on how a state governor perceives or views education. How much will be done to get governors on board to deliver on some of the recommendations?
Assalamu alaikum. This, indeed, it is easy, but we could see it as a challenge, because there has to be, we have to mount continuous sensitization, advocacy, and with the use of this social media, and that we need to, we have to take it, we want to detach it separately, each state, because this issue, the findings, what we found is beyond generalization. For us, for success to be achieved in this context, we need to take a door-to-door to each state governor, submit the results, present the implementation plan. We produce an articulate 25 pages action plan. We have to read the governors first. We need to sensitize them. In fact, each state, the conferences of this nature need to be conducted in every state. This is just one conference that is made. We'll do a door-to-door continuous advocacy, sensitization through the media, and then with the involvement of stakeholders and some civil society groups, so that we bring out the true picture of what obtains. So it is beyond this conference. Each state needs to take time. We go and we go and present the result to the governors we do a general stakeholders meeting, then the governors, and we need to get the northern state governors also, like an avenue of northern governors forum meeting could be utilized in order to meet them and make presentation to them, after which again each state governor will be met in his own domain in order to identify the peculiarities and map out the challenges and come up with the roadmap that have already been produced in the research we've conducted.
You said to bring out the true pictures.
Yeah.
What are the most urgent issue, the findings? What are the true pictures that
one of the major findings and one of the critical areas that needs to be addressed is to get their attention. We have to get there. They have to be convinced. They have to agree to work with the team of experts that have done it, so that each state will be attended to, bringing out the peculiarities, the major challenges and the peculiarities. Otherwise, if it's just on a general, just say one conference or the meeting with the northern state governors alone, it's not enough. Each governor has to be met in his own state, bring out the entire document, read it, digest it, and then work on the action plan.
All right, thank you very much, Professor Fatima Dantata. Let's bring in now Colonel Bala Mande. It's almost worrisome, I should say, to indicate, for instance, that state governments and state governors would need to be sensitized on the recommendations of the conference or the outcomes of the conference to enable them to implement, considering the primacy of education and the growth of societies. From your experience in government, why is it that state governments have taken their eyes off this very critical ball in their governance approach?
Thank you. The state governors have so much competing demands while they run their offices. Education is one of them. Education is a prime sector that can usher development into any society. Therefore, it deserves the priority and attention it should have. So the experts from the North, who were commissioned by Sir Ahmadu Bello Memorial Foundation, made an in-depth research as to why education is in this state in northern Nigeria. And they have made a range of recommendations. Now, the governors have to be sensitized so that they can be part of it, to be carried along so that they can give the desired attention to the education sector. It has become therefore imperative that the experts meet with the governors, sensitize them, and let them see the reasons. Let us see the imperatives, the compelling imperatives, why they should give more attention to education compared to other sectors. The aim there is we work together, we synergize to bring education up to the standard of other regions in Nigeria.
Now, let's look at the issue of infrastructure in education sector. It's a national challenge. What suggestions do you have in the area of investment in this area, which are the low-hanging fruits? I'll throw that question to Comrade Sanusi Makodi.
Thank you very much. I think it is obvious that the Nigerian population is one of the fastest growing population in the world. And there is even a projection that by 2050, we are going to have a population of over 400 million people. And we are going to be the third largest nation in terms of population in the world. We are going to display, India will displace China. Nigeria will displace US. So it is going to be India, China, Nigeria by 2050. How many years do we have now? 20-something years. As the population grows, education uptakers, people that are supposed to be in school, you need to have the infrastructure, which is defined as one of the critical elements that enable institutions to have carrying capacity to do justice. Right now, we have a backlog, the highest rate of out-of-school children. That's just one side of the issue. According to a study by the African Progress Panel, Africa have twin educational challenge, that a good number of school age-going children are not in school. One challenge. Second challenge, those who are in school are not learning enough. There is an indicator called PISA, Program for International Student Assessment. Nigeria is in the bottom of the ladder. And Northern Nigeria is in the bottom of the national ladder. So the critical infrastructure that needs to accommodate classrooms, libraries, laboratories, hostels, offices, to have a conducive environment for learning cannot be overemphasized. But it has to be funded. And there is global economic crisis. There is national economic crisis. So vis-a-vis these challenges, what is required, that is why we need to give education priority. We have been under-investing. We have not been investing based on international standard. We have been not doing the fundamental things that we are supposed to do. We need to call all the stakeholders' attention because education is critical and is an enabler for you to do any other thing. If you are talking about good governance, without education, forget it. Security of life and property, without education, forget it. Educational, economic transformation, building human capital, giving health care, environmental sustainability, education is the single panacea that when you get it right, it helps you to get the other sectors right. So it is in this context that we need to advocate, while appreciating the recommendations of the conference, that there is need for a redoubling of effort in terms of investment in education. And when I say investment in education, my own perspective is broader. I am thinking that the individual needs to make an investment in the educational system. The households, communities, civil societies, organized private sector is not a venture that you can leave to government alone. We need to mobilize the whole country and say, look, we want Nigeria to survive and to prosper and to be able to deliver on the key national goals. We need to give education priority. Practically, not theoretically. We have been talking for long. It is high time to start the action. And conferences like this should serve as appetizers, either catalysts or stimulants for us to be reawakened. When we say the governors are going to be sensitized, it's not that they don't know. They need to be reminded. They need to be reminded. And one of the primary purpose of government is to secure the life and property of people, to ensure sustainable development, good governance, and all this cannot be achieved without education.
All right, thank you very much, Sanusi Maikudi. Let's bring in one more time Professor Kabir Bala, Vice Chancellor of ABU. What was your evaluation of the stakeholders' attendance at the conference yesterday? And what does that point to in terms of the willingness to implement the recommendations?
Thank you very much for that question. My evaluation of the attendance is actually abysmal. The most important stakeholders are the governors in this respect, as mentioned earlier. There was not a single serving governor at that conference, and I sat from the beginning to the end. Conference adjourned at about 6 p.m. And some state governors sent in their commissioners. That was fine to represent them, but there were a few. And at the end of that, I think there was about maybe one or two left at the end of the conference. That is a very bad omen. As I said, these are the principal actors, the governors in these states, especially as far as basic education is concerned. And this is the attitude that we noticed. And that underscores the importance of the sensitization that's mentioned by Professor Fatima and Comrade Sunusi. It's not as if they don't know, but I think it is important to further sensitize them of the importance of education. Everything that we do is dependent on the education of the society. And so I think it is very, very important that we bring in all the stakeholders, even if it means that we said at one point, pressurizing them. Most of them are educated. All of them are educated. And these are people who went through, 100% of them went through public education. And if times have changed, the government cannot fund education wholly, at least let them do their own part. And then other actors, stakeholders can do their own part. Let me mention this. Many people mention this issue of free education. It started perhaps in 1976 during the Universal Basic Education Program. But I make bold to say, I paid primary school fees, £1, late 60s, mid-60s to late 60s. And when Naira came in 73, it became 2 Naira. I paid up to primary 6. I paid in secondary school, but the difference is that the incomes, it was scaled. The incomes of parents were considered, taken into consideration. So some people paid nothing based on the incomes as perceived, as evaluated rather, of their parents. So as Comrade said, everybody has a responsibility. Parents have responsibility, society has responsibility, government has responsibility. But the key stakeholder here is government. They provide the framework for regulation. They also provide the basic infrastructure, and they should live up to that responsibility.
You know, Professor Bala was reminding us of how much he paid. You paid £1, you said?
£1, that's 60s.
Yeah, you were
Primary
lucky.
school.
In my time, we paid £1, 10 shillings.
Okay.
Or called 110.
Oh.
You had to pay. Because on Monday.
Primary school.
Yeah, primary school.
Primary.
Primary school. You paid,
Primary
and then that's part of what Comrade Mekudi was also talking about. Nobody's talking about free. It's just the entire concept of saying, look, we have this major challenge. Again, we talked about it yesterday, and earlier this month when we were reviewing Nigeria at 63, we also came to that point to say, for the entire country to move forward, you look at those nodes that are not up to speed, and then how do you ramp up the challenge? How do you ramp up the growth in those particular areas? And in this case, the focus is on education in northern Nigeria. Conceptually, what is the problem? Because we've had sometimes debates on this issue. Some persons would justify it and say, no, it's cultural, it's religious. Yes, for example, and I say this with a tremendous respect, to say, oh, Islamic education is good education. Nobody necessarily needs Western education, and so on and so forth. Does that get in the way, for instance, of having a clear focus, such as the recommendations out of this conference now are suggesting, to say we have to have additional educational opportunities in addition, added to whatever it is that is going on culturally and religiously, Colonel Monday?
Well, thank you. Yes, in education, the culture of the people is also considered because it will be used to prompt them up to key into the programs of education. So, for example, in some parts of the north, not every northern state is wholly a Muslim state. There are Christians, there are African religionists. And so culture is also a variable tool that can be considered to promote education in northern Nigeria. Like it was said also, you consider, you apportion responsibility, what the parents should pay. For example, I was paying 10 shillings from 66 to 67 when I was in the primary school. Probably at that time, they considered our condition. I was in the village. We didn't even have electricity. We didn't have water. So the income of our parents was very low. That is why we didn't pay like Professor Bala, who was paying £1, who were paying half a pound, 10 shillings. So the culture of the people, local musicians were used to advocate for education in northern Nigeria. People like Maman Shatta, people like Ankwero, the government called them. They told them, use our culture, use your talent in our culture to advocate for education and development. Let the children attend school. So culture is a tool that can be used for educational development in all societies.
Now, I want to go back to the involvement of the governors, the government in the promotion of education in northern Nigeria. Just like you stated, VC stated earlier, that it's not that encouraging. And we know that education is the cornerstone for development and progress of any nation or community. So the issue of political will depend on how states, governor receives or view education. So how can we, encourage them to get more involved, in funding education to deliver on some of these, your recommendation? Let me throw the questions to Professor Gaji Fatima.
There are so many ways that they can be encouraged. In fact, governors are the principal actors of all the activities that is carried in all states, at both state, local government level, ward level. So the governors, they have to be, even though they are doing it in their own ways, but they need to be shown, they need to be educated on the real picture of what is on ground. In fact, they are quite aware of the realities on ground. When you go to some schools, especially the public schools, the situation, the level of dilapidation cannot be overemphasized. So maybe we'll be showing, they need to be showing some pictorials, they need to be encouraged on paying visits, just as it used to be, like this unscheduled visit or shotgun visit. Just a governor could pop into any school, anywhere, let them mount. The inspectorate divisions should be reactivated and should be reinforced, should be given more powers, so that they can do whatever they met on ground. Let them make sure that there's active monitoring and evaluation team that reports to the governor, if not on weekly basis, at every month end. There's need that they meet the governors, identify the major areas that need urgent attention. Let them put it on a scale of preference, so that since the challenges are almost enormous, so they cannot be treated all at once. In order to ensure quality in the implementation, just as we gave them the action plan, it will be put on a scale of preference, whereby the issues to be attended would be arranged on a pro rata basis, whereby they could be attended gradually. But really, the governors have to be going on the physical visit. They need to see the reality on ground. You see children under the shade. In fact, in some schools now you don't even see them. They don't go to school because children are hungry in the mornings. They are busy going to fetch water for the family. Before they finish, it is already halfway, the school almost halfway. Or when they are on an empty stomach, they don't even go to school. So it is really very, very issue that needs to be rescued. Sort of a.
All right.
But from
okay.
okay. Okay.
You have a follow-up.
Yes, because from what you have just said now, looking at just like the comrade said, that it's a collective,
Yes.
effort. The government, the individuals,
Yes.
and other organizations, other foundations. How do you collaborate with them? How do you also, get them to get involved in this?
We need to stretch our hands.
That's besides government.
Yeah,
all
besides
that,
government.
yes,
In fact, everybody is a stakeholder when it comes to the issue of education. Like here in the North, we need to involve more of the private people and faith-based organizations, so that, that's why I said, I keep on saying sensitization. We need to mount it in order to let everybody know that everybody is a stakeholder. Most people are beneficiaries. As my boss said, we are all beneficiaries of public education. But now the fact that there's private education, but still in the North, we have quite a good number of public schools. But we need to conscientize, a lot of advocacy, especially the traditional rulers, since they have a say. Our people listen to them very well. They need to be involved as among the principal stakeholders. They should be used as channels in order to reach out to the government, in order to have a speedy implementation of what the action plan that is contained in the report of the research conducted.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much, Prof. Mayor Kudi, let's come back again to the quality of attendance or participation at the conference. Professor Bala was speaking to the participation by the executive branch, which in his opinion wasn't encouraging. What did you also find in terms of participation, say, by lawmakers from the northern part of the country? Because if government is going to get involved, we're talking about infrastructure, we're talking about, for instance, getting more funds allocated to education. That has to be by way of appropriation, the responsibility of the legislature. That's one. Second leg also, we know that the local governments have been virtually emasculated in all parts of the country. What did you find in terms of participation by Algon as a body, or Algon from the northern part of the country, or the conference of speakers? Were they there?
Yeah. Thank you very much. I have not noticed the presence of local governments. Neither nor have I noticed presence of legislatures from the state level. A lot of the participants, big faces and names, were from the National Assembly. And it's just because it's convenient, it was brought to Abuja, and it's easy for them to drive their cars 10, 15 minutes, and they came to the venue. Some of them even gave goodwill messages. And the representatives of the federal government were well in attendance. So what can we make out of that? I believe the society is greater than the government. Like my mentor and the lecturer used to say, soldiers come and go, but the barrack remains. So governments come and go, politicians come and go, the society remains. They are the players of today, the dramatist personnel. They occupy the decision-making unit for today. Yesterday, they were not the ones. Tomorrow, they might not be. So the society must be focused. Any stakeholder who deliberately, with or without justification, choose to absent himself, we should find a way to survive their absence and continue with the journey. Because it's about the people. And it is the people that elect governments. And if some government functionaries decide not to participate in activities as critical as this, we should take note of it. When it comes to decision time, we should be properly guided. Because whether we like it or not, our country and the world in a state of major crisis. This is a time to ask for and demand for and work for visionary leaders, competent leaders, patriotic leaders that can deliver and secure a better future for humanity. And education is one of the fundamental roots. So whether any stakeholder comes or he does not come, those who are there should keep the flag of hope flying. Let's keep like now, if any one of us falls sick, we just say take him to the hospital. Who trained the doctor? Who trained the nurses? Somebody somewhere somehow must have done that work that we are not trying to benefit. So what should we be doing? We should do our own part. We were trained by some teachers. Who trained the teachers that trained us? Somebody did his work. So my own perspective is that we need to map the stakeholders. There is a concept called state and society that clearly says government is just a segment of the society. There are other economic forces, social forces, cultural forces, religious forces. Yeah, mobilize all of them. Let them prioritize. When you look at the PIR, policy, institutions, and regulations governing education, there is room for everybody to play his or her own role. And the demand and appeal is that every stakeholder should be alive to his or her responsibility. Because we are in a state of crisis, we need redemption as quickly as possible. And education is one of the low-hanging fruits. And because Mr. A or B is not in attendance, those who in attendance should continue the journey. By the time they wake up from their slumber, we will have worked on some percentages of the problem. This is what we need to do. Because if you insist everybody must be there, you remember the parable of the work of somebody, anybody, nobody. At the end of the day, we will find ourselves in trouble. So this is the advocacy that the stakeholders should be mapped. There should be advocacy as they suggest, and let everybody do his own little. By the time those that are sleeping wake up, maybe the problem will remain 55 to 60%. Those in attendance will have done part of the work. Then it will be easy for them to come and finish over. But in any case, I insist that government come and go, but the society remain. If you take our destiny and places on they are just eager to finish their tenure and look for the next one. And that's it. Well, some of the governors now have given themselves some life pension in hundreds of millions. And it's enough for them to take a jet and fly out of the country by that arrangement. So what stake do they have? What stake do they have when they have insured themselves and their immediate family?
Yeah, the question that arises also is the opportunity cost of such leveraging of their pensions from the coffers of the state. I think that's also
that's the issue.
Yeah, we can.
There is a moral issue there.
Yeah, moral, absolutely.
In public service, for you to earn pension, you have to work 35 years.
Okay, but Prof, Vice Chancellor of Ahmadu Bello University, there's also in terms of advocacy on this very critical regional issue, ultimately a national issue. You talked about the use of traditional rulers, for instance, to sensitize people and then to also sensitize government, attract appropriate investment. But there's something about civil society. Does the conference, or rather the conference recommendations, point to the role of civil society or community-based organizations, for instance, in providing the appropriate echo for the value of education and the need to create the right atmosphere, the right investment, and so on and so forth? Because civil society is very strong, for instance, on election and electioneering, very strong on anti-corruption. But we don't seem to hear so much about them and say, look, this is an existential problem. How do we get in there?
Thank you very much. Yes, the conference indeed made recommendations as to how civil society could get involved in this sensitization problem that Professor Fatima has been hammering on. And it is indeed very important, as you said also, civil society has become so strong, and it has become some kind of a tier of government now. So, you know, in my previous submission, I said beyond sensitization, if it means pressurizing them. So I will say beyond civil society, the media also, all sections of the media should be involved in this sensitization activity. The academia, in fact, during the conferences, they mentioned something like, something like the research that we do, institutes of education, faculties of education. We have so many professors of education. This is part of our own responsibility, research. And then when you say community service, is the CSR in private sector organizations. Our CSR, community service, is actually disseminating the results of the research that we conduct for the use of society. So, civil society, the media, academia, I think you can have a tripod such that even if it means, as I said, pressurizing them. Let me mention this, for instance. We hear that for you to access your allocation from the UBEC, Universal Basic Education Commission, you have to put a counterpart fund. So if you allocated 1 billion in the state governor, you need to put another 1 billion for you to access that money. But we hear that there is so much huge funds backlog in Universal Basic Education Commission, which are not accessed by governors, especially from the north. Why? So these are, examples of how civil society, as you said, and I add the media and academia can come together, publicize this kind of thing, which will go along with in pressurizing, not only sensitizing, but pressurizing them to do this. I think I would actually commend the members of the committee and this Ahmadu Bello University, Ahmadu Bello Foundation, Sadona Foundation, for coming up with this recommendation. I think it is very important and it can be used to a large extent to address this problem.
Well, thank you, Prof. And that takes me to the next question, which I'm going to throw at Colonel Mande. Monitoring and evaluation is critical, is key issue that can also help in addressing the challenge confronting education in the North. Can you tell us how this should be carried out to deliver on the recommendations in the report?
Thank you very much. In every developmental decision that will be made will be based on the information available. That means sufficient data on the subject has to be generated, has to be analyzed, and has to be, a recommendation has to come out of it. Now, monitoring is the ability to take records whether they are positive or negative as to the objective that is targeted. Now that information that is collected will be evaluated, and out of it comes recommendations, action plan, and then implementation. The implementation of the recommended action plan should also be evaluated as it goes on. Then at the end of the day, the final result will be, has the target been achieved or there is shortcoming. If the target is being achieved, well, from there, we move forward to a higher target. And if the target, if there are shortcomings, then we reevaluate and see how best to now approach in order to achieve the set objective. And there will be a reporting system as part of it. So that is, in essence, monitoring and evaluation for the achievement of the objective that is being recommended in the report of the foundation.
Okay, thank you very much for your thoughts on that. But I want to also ask Prof. The recommendations also mention the importance of technology in education. How can digital tools be integrated into learning in northern Nigeria schools?
It is easy, but yet I can say it's difficult, considering the indicators and the reality on ground. We still have a long way to go as far as introduction of technology into basic education is concerned. These are schools, or these are environments where you see that it's not really befitting or habitable for humans. Classrooms would see, most of them, the ceilings, the general infrastructure, the offices of the staff, in fact, most of the pupils, they live out, they are sitting on the bare floor. How do you take technology to a child who sits on the bare floor, where maybe even the traditional writing materials are not even available? Even, and not only in the rural areas, even inside the metropolitan part of the states, you hardly find a befitting classroom that could easily accommodate, or that technology could be easily conveyed to them. Really, the reality on ground now, you can only find that in some private schools, because even the model schools that have been identified and equipped, when you go there, you still find that it is what is on ground is generally inadequate. It's below expectations.
What about the teachers? Because are the teachers equipped enough to implement this, even if the environment was feasible?
The same is the story is all the same, all around. The teachers, some of them, well, we thank God with the efforts put in some times back, where all the teachers, those that are the grade 2 refers, had to go back where they got Nigerian certificate of education. But still, most of the teachers also, you find that the environment is not conducive. There's not more enabling environment where you could easily see what you are asking me to be achieved. The environment is not enabling. The teachers, they are not up to date. They don't go for refresher courses, no seminars, no workshops, no symposium, no promotions. They are not happy. They are or they are low ebb, their morale is very low.
Yeah, but this is the same story we have in other parts of the country as well. The picture that Prof, you are sketching now, and yet there are reports, contemporaneous reports about projects being executed and commissioned with fanfare. So you ask yourself, well, if you are commissioning projects, what happens to the development of the human beings for whom those projects are intended? In other words, if a government has resources to expend on projects that are commissioned, whether flyovers, roads, those ones are important.
Yes.
But what about the development of the human beings? I want to come back to
Human development is
key. Before
key.
we come back to Comrade, I want to go back to Prof. At this conference, and therefore arising from the report of the research team that worked for about 2 years, what is the conception of education that is being considered in this case? Is it academic education, that is bookish education? Same old 3 arrows, writing, arithmetic, and reading, as we had in the past? Special education, which of course is the area of Professor Fatima, or is it solely vocational and technical education, or a combination of all this? And therefore, whatever it is, what are the pathways identified by the conference now, or recommended by the conference, to accelerate educational growth in the northern part of the country?
Thank you very much for that question. Yes, the conference, to answer the question quickly, is recommended a multi-dimensional approach. And these things have been existing long before now. One, we had the technical and vocational education, as you mentioned. We had the polytechnics, and we had the university education. And very early in life, if we recall, there used to be this career pathways in secondary schools. And the aptitudes of students then were quickly identified, and people were recommended. The career masters used to suggest whether you would be good in science, in technology, in teaching, and so it went. Now, what happened over time was we paid little attention, or none actually, to technical and vocational education, which is a pathway completely on its own. You could survive through technical education and grow. We have killed all the technical schools. I think some states have tried to maintain 1 or 2, and some are trying to revive them so that we have a supply of these technical people who are almost always employed, either self-employed or by some organizations. Now there are the polytechnics that provide middle-level manpower. And it would seem as if most energy has been directed, even by people, even by the general public, to university education. We have many polytechnics, but as we learned, if I have some backlog in education, while universities have over subscription. But this also boils down to the fact that government itself has not been regulating these pathways. There has been this talk about dichotomy between HND and the degree. Permit me to talk about this a bit. There should be the avenue for somebody with a HND is a career pathway to attain his maximum. It doesn't change, his own career from that of a graduate. And that is the problem that we have in this country. You come to a limit and you say HND will stop at a point. Why don't you develop a career pathway for them to attain the highest level? I have been in the business of training these crafts and artisans for a long time. I am a carpenter, by the way, myself. So I went...
Executive carpenter.
Well, so you say.
Yeah, professorial carpenter.
So I've
Yeah.
attended many of these conferences in Switzerland, in Britain, many times in Russia, these craft conferences and fairs. The one in Switzerland, in particular, is of very important reference here. The young man who won the best prize, international, a 16-year, 17-year-old chap, was asked when he was going to the university, he said, what for? Because he could attend any level that the country allowed the pathway for him to attend any level that a graduate could attend. So now that is one of the reasons that people are shying away, because some careers are thought as inferior to others, and whereas they are not. Take a carpenter or a plumber, for instance. If he doesn't work, you can't stay in your house. So it's as important as a medical doctor. So we need to, that's why I say perhaps government has not been doing much in regulating. Recently has been this issue of TVET, Technical and Vocational Education, which has been adopted by Nigeria. So we have levels. There used to be 6 levels of certification. The carpenter, level 1, level 2, up to level 6. Now I understand that they have scaled it up to level 9. And that level 9 is supposed to be an equivalent to PhD if he's employed. So he can grow. So but the pathway, the career pathway has not been developed by the Federal Civil Service, so nobody will do it. So back to our question, the conference recognized, as suggested, recommended by the scientists and committee members, all the pathways, the technical, the educational and vocational, and then the polytechnics, the teaching. Let me also mention this. There's been lots of debate on issue of grade 2 teachers. Many of us, including myself, wonder why the grade 2 was phased out. My teachers, my grade 2 teachers to date, I respect them. If they were trained grade 2 teachers, you can't take that away from them. I don't see NTA graduates competing in terms of competence in imparting knowledge to pupils at that level than grade 2. So this has also been debated extensively in the conference. But the issue is, will you remunerate them? I started becoming interested in teaching in primary school because my primary school teachers were models to me. They were happy, they were teaching well, they were behaving well. I wanted to be a teacher when I was in primary school because they were models. Who will respect a primary school teacher today? And a governor, and no respect, no prestige, a governor can wake up today and say he has sacked all the teachers, 20,000. Why? He conducted a test, and many of them failed. In the last 30 years, since their employment, nobody had bothered to train them, not a conference, no capacity building. But he came today 4 years, and he sacked 20,000 people. Who will want to teach? So these are also some of the things that were discussed at that conference. But to answer your question simply, all the other dimensions were taken into account in terms of the type of education that we require in the North.
Okay, let me throw my questions to Comrade. Thank you for your thoughts there, Prof. But I want to come back to this issue of local government involvement in education. Education programs in the past, implemented by local government, and how should they be empowered or strengthened now to help address these challenges?
Thank you very much. I think local government is the closest tier of government to the people.
Yeah.
And the primary education is under their jurisdiction, even though we have state universal basic education board. But the teachers of primary school are employees of the local government, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. And being very close to the people, they should be able to identify their stakeholders. They should be able to identify the strengths and weaknesses in the institutions. They should be able to identify best practices, innovative practices that have worked, and try to use them as pilot and replicate and upscale. Because we used to say that the local government system has been bastardized, it has been rubbished, it doesn't have capacity. Well, who elects them? You set standards. The 1976 Desuki panel reform of the local government have introduced democracy. It has given people the choice to elect who are going to manage their local affairs. And based on the resources available to them, if you really elect competent hands, garbage in, garbage out, depending on what you do, that's the outcome you expect. But local governments, being the tier of government very close to the people, be responsible largely for primary education, even though you have UBEC, you have SUBEB, it is the very, very important responsibility of the local government to set a foundation of the future generation through quality education. They should not be limited to the resources available now. They should mobilize stakeholders. They should look for innovative, international best practices, even local best practices to adopt. Because when you are in a situation of crisis, when you have multiple challenges, and you don't throw money at the problem, you use your brain, you use wisdom, you use innovation, you use case study, you use peer review mechanism to come out with models that have worked somewhere, and then replicate them so that you make a difference. Otherwise, we'll be moving in cycle.
All right. Thank you very much, Comrade Sanusi Maikode. You're watching Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. We'll take a short break now. When we return, we'll get into the concluding part of our conversation and the program.
I promise that I shall remain committed and serve faithfully. I also invite all to join this enterprise to make our beloved nation into its better self. We can do it. We must do it. We shall do it.
All right, you're welcome back. It's still Good Morning Nigeria on the network service of the Nigerian Television Authority. Professor Fatima Dantata, the issue of the focus on education in the northern part of the country, Professor Bala has already explained that it's broad spectrum, academics, special education, as well as VOTEC, as it was called, as technical and vocational. What, in the opinion of the conference, could be the low-hanging fruits, and therefore the quickest, if you may, entry points to dealing with this challenge? And in dealing with this, I'm often reminded of what happened, say, during the Second Republic. In Lagos, for instance, the school system was sometimes being run on 3 streams in a day. Lateef Jakonde, who came into office in October 1979, said this must stop. So, first thing to do is to provide infrastructure. It was being mocked and told that they were building cow sheds for schools and so on and so forth. But they faced the problem head on. And of course, within a short period, all that problem was eliminated. And in the other so-called Lobo states under the UPN, you had free education, teacher training program was ramped up, pupils were admitted into schools, books were provided for them, supplied, free by the institutions, with the stamp, of course, of the state government on it. Are these ideas that, I mean, probably antiquated now, but more than 40 years, that state governments in the northern part of the country could learn from and say, yes, let's say we are focusing on TVET, vocational and technical education, and these are the things that we could immediately do?
Yeah. Like you see now in some northern states, they are beginning to introduce, it's even going beyond the 3 R's, because they've started introducing entrepreneurial skills. Like even at university level now, there are some university courses that students have to study and pass before they are even issued certificate. Entrepreneurial skills. There's, like, let me cite example of my university. there's a directorate now under whom these entrepreneurial skills are conducted. It's it's 4 credit course divided into 2. 4 credits in the first semester and 4 credits in the second semester, along with the the usual GSP that each university has been conducting. So also the same in entrepreneurial skills. Like in Kano now, they've started establishing, but though it's mostly private schools, they've started introducing entrepreneurial skills right from the basic level, because considering the situation that a person could be a graduate, could hold a bachelor's degree and stay for years without employment. Now that things have changed, the situation on ground is not favorable. They are introducing entrepreneurial skills right from basic levels, some private schools, and some, though the government is yet to introduce it, but like in my case in Kano, there are a lot of private schools that have started introducing entrepreneurial skills right from primary through to secondary. But in the university, it has been there, I think, for about 4 to 5 years. In order to address this issue of unemployment, as my boss said,
no, I'm sorry, Prof. I'm sorry to interject. What I'm talking about, yes, we know a number of tertiary institutions have introduced entrepreneurial studies as part
Yes.
of the course content, for the requirement for graduation. We're talking about state governments or local governments now. Prof earlier was talking about, say, carpentry. If I have no interest in carpentry and you put that in entrepreneurship, I probably would just memorize it and then get going with it.
Yes.
If my interest is in plumbing or other electrical works or electronic works, welding, undersea welding, some of the jobs, let's say, to lay pipelines, underwater pipelines. You require the skill for that. There's a special skill. Unfortunately, for us to do that here, we have to get labor from outside of our shores.
Yeah.
So I'm saying now to say, as an outcome of the conference, is there a recognition that technical education is critical? And perhaps you make an audit of what is available to deliver quality technical and vocational education. A state government would now say, this is our entry point for this. We are going to be known for nothing else. In the meantime, say in the next decade or so, this is where we are going to invest. Is that the way to go?
It is part and parcel of the recommendation of as presented yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Implementation lies with the principal stakeholders, because some amendments have to be done to the curriculum so that it is introduced right from the basic level. But the recommendation is clear that technical and vocational education should be reintroduced to be part and parcel of the curriculum right from the basic levels of education. And it is left to the government to make sure that it is fully implemented right from the primary, right from the basic levels, to ensure that entrepreneurial skills and opportunities are widened rather than giving emphasis more on the bookish aspect of it. The practical aspect of it is now being introduced, because there are some individuals that have established some training centers, training young children without even acquiring the basic literacy. They delve into the training of entrepreneurial skills by private individuals. It is really, we have it like in Kano, we have a lot of centers that train them plumbing work, electrical fittings, but more of, in most cases, more of apprenticeship. They just employ them, they go with them on daily basis, they train them, and they give them some token.
Okay,
some of them without necessarily having the
certification.
Certification, and they are no literacy or numeracy, just the basic skills, the technical skills.
Okay, thank you, Prof, for that, your insight in that. But do we have enough qualified, teachers, that can actually teach the students this technical, education? Looking at the availability of highly motivated teachers. Let me throw my questions to Cornell.
Yes, in this part of the country, in general, there is a dearth of teachers, whether technical or any any kind of teachers. We agree, we accept it. So the focus is on how to improve, how to train more teachers, technical and whatever, so that we can add to what we already have. Not all the states are the same. Some states have more advantage. They are better off than others. And that is a statement of fact. So for those states that are lagging behind, they now become the focus. How to source more technical teachers to cope with the demand of training the students at all levels of education. One other issue we may have in some states is that the current challenge of insecurity. Some parts of some states are being controlled by bandits, and it's like they take over the communities in those areas. The infrastructures are there, the students are there, but some teachers will not be willing to move to those areas, even when they are posted. So this is one of the challenges that we have.
We need to be
that is hindering technical education in the rural community.
So how do we now tackle that security challenge now? Because if we know that there is security challenge prevalent in the north, so how do you now encourage parents and teachers, to bring their wards to school in spite of this? Are you working with what advice or recommendations are being made with the security agencies to ensure that there is, a relative peace in the area?
It is unfortunate. It's not right to deal with terrorists or bandits. But some communities will have no option than to deal with them. They pay taxes and all sorts of levies. They even work for the bandits. The bandits will direct them to go and work in their farmland or to do some mining for them so that they will be left alone to do their daily activities, going to the farm, for children to go to school and all that.
Okay.
But it is the responsibility of the federal government to provide security for all citizens in all places at all times.
Okay.
So
thank you very much, Colonel Balamande. We are virtually out of time now. So we'll have to appreciate everyone. But I hope that it was part of the consideration of the report and therefore an outcome of the conference, the role of SUBEB in delivering quality education. SUBEB has been politicized, not just in the north, but elsewhere in the country, where political appointees get on to become chairmen and often is seen as a conduit. So SUBEB doesn't appear to be delivering on its envisaged mandate. If that was part of the recommendation, how do you depoliticize appointment into SUBEB, that is State Universal Basic Education Board, get competent persons to actually run it much more efficiently? I'm sure that it's a topic that we'll have time to return to in due course. On which note, we'd like to thank all our guests who have been with us on the program this morning. Comrade Sanusi Mekudi, Managing Director, Kaduna State Water Corporation. Thank you very much for being here today. We also would like to thank Professor Gaji Fatima Dantata of the Department of Special Education, Bayero University, in Kano.
Thank
Deep
you.
appreciation also to Colonel Bala Mande, retired, the former Minister of Environment of the Federal Republic. And last but not the least, the Vice Chancellor of Ahmadu Bello University, Professor Kabir Bala. Thank you very much for being our guest on Good Morning Nigeria today. So that's it for our conversation segment. Let's go over now to the world of sports.